Okay. Well, like I said, I've been so excited about this because we had Debbie Ziegelmeier here last year, and we got such great feedback about her last year. The board thought, should we invite her to do our December meetings like every year? And the board loved the idea because, like I said, she's the head of the MUFON dive team. She talked all about underwater USOs. So, and now she's back. And I talked to her a couple months ago. I said, Debbie, we want to have you back. What do you got for us? I know she's always got cool stuff. She's just like researching like mad. So she was, well, we talked about a few things. She was, I do have about 6 or 8 cases about underwater abductions. And I was like, what the? I've heard of abductions and I've heard of underwater stuff. I've never heard about underwater abductions. So I was like, let's do that. I was like 6 to 8 cases. Let's do that. So Debbie Ziegelmeier, let me tell you a little bit about her. If I can turn this page. Oh no, watch, the page isn't going to turn. Come on, there we go. That would help, but I think I'm okay though. So Debbie Ziegelmeier joined MUFON in 2000 and became a field investigator shortly thereafter. She's currently a MUFON Star Team investigator, Missouri State Director on the MUFON Business Board of Directors, a MUFON Mars team member, a co-founder of the MUFON Dive Team, and the MUFON Functional Director of Underwater Research and Recovery. Yeah, so she's got a few things on her plate, it sounds like. She has over 1,200 completed UFO investigations, with over 875 of them being MUFON sighting reports. Debbie has been a Roswell 1947 crash research investigator for over 25 years and is a member of Ted Phillips' TPRC team. In 2017, she was awarded both the Roswell Incident Excellence Report Award by the Roswell Daily Record and MUFON Field Investigator of the Year. Debbie's book, The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, which was released in September 2021, is a reference guide to UFO, USO, water-related activity. She and her husband, Wayne, currently live in Southeast Missouri and own and manage Largo Properties, LLC, and custom RV and boat storage. Debbie is also, because she needs more things to do, we have to have it also here because she's not busy enough. She's also a PADI scuba instructor and owner of the Missouri Scuba Diving LLC. And like I said, I've been really looking forward to it. I always love hearing Debbie talk because she's so knowledgeable. She really does a fantastic job. So Minnesota MUFON, whether you're in person or online, help me give Debbie Ziegelmeier a big round of applause.
Okay, so you're right. And actually that PAD, that's Patty. I'm a Patty scuba instructor, kind of retired. I still teach a little bit, but not a whole lot. Appreciate you inviting me back. A little bit of what I've been researching. I've got actually about a dozen people who remember being taken underwater. And to get to that point, you have to understand what people have seen to make you want to believe that abductees are actually being taken underwater. So there's bases, there's people that see creatures, there's things coming in and out of the water. And then so I'm going to progress to the point where I actually have people that remember being taken, which was a really hard task because if you've ever researched abductees, a lot of them will remember being taken, then they'll remember being, maybe when they get brought back under regression, they'll remember some of what happened to them. Very few people remember the trip back and forth because that's the big secret. If they remember how they got to a place and then how they were returned and they know where it is, the biggest secret that has to be kept with alien abductors is where their location is. So that was a task in itself, but I'm going to start here. A few years ago, I was asked by the Pine Bush Paranormal Museum to create a map about underwater sightings. And so this thing in reality is about 4 by 6 foot. I had it laid out on the floor of my office. There's 300 dots on here. Some of them could be 10, 15 high. I just put one dot of a location, especially the Caribbean. But these are all water or sea sightings, and they were all documented, and that's all longitude and latitude. So, and then I have a list of exactly what ship they were seen from. So some of the key factors that you have to consider are resident. A resident's living in a place for some length of time, then you're residing. Colonization occurs when any one or more species populate an area. 70% of the earth is covered by water, so that it's a big area, great place to hide. But according to NOAA, we've explored less than 5%, and we actually know more about the surface of the moon than we do underwater here on our own planet. I've come to find out, doing research, that 1 in 5 sightings is water related in some way, whether or not it's an ocean, sea, river, lake, creek. January 11th of 2022, the Pentagon opened up an office in DC to investigate UAPs and report to Congress. And surprisingly, but not for me, July of 2022, the DC office announced that they were going to focus on water sightings. These are some of the ones you can notice, the ones on the right-hand side where it's still shots of some of the videos that were released by the government from the Nimitz and the Roosevelt. The one that's 9 pictures together, I got that off of the Black Vault. But there is a lot of activity going on. And it's not reported so much because, like I said, the oceans are vast. Oceans and seas are vast, and you have to really be at the right place at the right time to see something because it happens very quick. Most of you have heard about the November 14th, 2004 sighting when Commander David Fravor was 100 miles off of San Diego on flying from the USS Nimitz carrier. And the ship was there in off the coast of San Diego with the USS Princeton. They'd been there for a couple weeks and they were doing training to go to the Persian Gulf. And you see the picture, the tic tac that's going across the water. What most people don't know is that they'd been sighting things for about 2 weeks, and they cut the tape short. That David Fravor actually follows this item down. It was the closest one down to the ocean. And, there's a whole story about how it, was in and out and the water was moving around. And what you don't know is it was about a dozen more above them. They wanted to keep that secret. There was a whole fleet of them. So I started looking into Tic Tacs because they're in and around the water. And I found this in Zechariah. Then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. And he said unto me, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll, the length thereof 20 cubits, and the beneath thereof 10 cubits. So that's, in my King James version of the Bible, there was something that's 15 by 30 foot that was a tic tac back in biblical times. I found another one of a gunman, first mate John Burrow, and he saw something. He served from 2008 to 2013 on the Carl Vinson. And in 2010, he was on deck looking at the water. He said, I was staring into the water from above when a large flat white tic tac object, approximately 20 feet in length, suddenly appeared in my view below me, moving right and darting into the depths as fast as it appeared. He said, I couldn't really comprehend what I saw. It was definitely a solid object, but when it descended, its forward end rapidly collapsed in on itself and disappeared. There's other sightings of things. This was a Commander Oleg, sorry, I can't talk, Sokolov. He publicly spoke in the Russian area of submarine encounters. This was a Russian submarine sighting in the Anapa area. He said that unknown vessels were being picked up by sonar all through the 1960s, traveling faster than anything that the Soviets had, or they knew that the Americans or anybody else had, faster than they could track them down. They had these strange sonar targets that were moving up and down, outmaneuvering them. They thought, okay, so the only way to find this out, it had them puzzled, was they brought technicians on board these submarines and said, what is going on here? They couldn't figure it out. They thought, okay, so we don't know what this is. They just decided that they were going to log the sightings and keep track of them, but nobody knew what these were. So we have unidentified submarines in 1963. This was reported by British naval officer Ivan Sanderson, who went on later on to write books about underwater UFOs or about several UFOs. In fact, but I did find some from underwater UFOs that he wrote about. But he said the Navy was conducting exercises off the coast of Puerto Rico. They were training in tracking submarines underwater. So this was a pretty big deal going on, in this one area, reported by a lot of people, because they had 5 surface ships that were involved, including the USS Wasp, several submarines, and aircraft. So it was a pretty big practice maneuver right off the coast of Puerto Rico. The sonar operator on one of the destroyers reported that a submarine was breaking formation from them and headed off following something. They said it was an underwater object that was moving 150 knots, which is 173 miles an hour. I mean, I'm not sure if that's possible now, but it definitely wasn't in 1963. This was tracked for 4 days, and they said it reached a depth of as deep as 27,000 feet. So 13 separate reports were noted in official logs that reported to Complant, which is a commander Atlantic Fleet ships in Norfolk, Virginia. Now, if you're going to report something like this, you don't want to look foolish, especially, the military, the commanders are reporting this. They had 13 reports that they're reporting to admirals that there is something going on in the water strange. So there was definitely something that they had no idea what it was. Vakuri from all through the 1960s and 1970s, and that's as far as the reports went. A lot of this information was released when the Soviet Union fell. And so I found a lot of this in books there are three Soviet officers, Soviet, or actually Russian, there are three Russian authors, Russian authors who were writing books about this type of thing. They were able to get a hold of a lot of these documents when the Soviet Union fell and it turned basically into Russia. So the reports pretty much stopped between the 60s and the 70s. But what we had here was one area where every time they went into this area, they heard this sound. And they called it Vakuri because it sounded it's kind of a slang word for the Russian word for croak. And they said the whatever it was underwater was sounding like a frog that was croaking. The Soviet icebreaker vessels were hearing this. They'd go into this area and they could hear the sound. They'd move out of the area and it wasn't there. The sound would kind of try and communicate with them. Sometimes the signals were a little bit different and it would go deeper. So they would go deeper. The submarines would go deeper trying to catch up with the sound, and then it would move higher again. So they'd play cat and mouse with them in this whole area, for 20 years. No idea if it's underwater. And it's something that they can't that the Russians weren't able to not only not identify but not follow because it would maneuver them. I started looking into other areas whales in the Puffin Islands. I said, yeah, I did. I found Phil Hoyle. He said that he believed there's an underwater base. He's popular ufologist. He said that there were numerous witnesses coming in and out of the water right there. He actually found witnesses that said they were abducted by aliens that were humanoid looking. They were told by these aliens that they had come from an underwater base. Catalina Island, I've been there several times. I was just there a couple of years ago. But on June 14th of 1992, there were reports over 200 craft that were observed. I did some research on that. I thought, was it 200 sightings? That was about 200 craft that people had reported because there were at different times in different areas in the ocean there around Catalina Island. And they would come out of the water. Some of them would come immediately out of the water and take off at a high rate of speed. Some of them would hover for a while. There weren't any sound at all. So I thought, okay, Catalina Island isn't that far from Malibu. And I checked, it's 48 miles away. They had reports to the Coast Guard there. The Coast Guard said, nah, we didn't see anything. So these things were seen, all these were seen in 1992 coming out of the water. I'm sure the Coast Guard was aware of it, but they said, nah, there wasn't anything to see there. And they refused to file a report. Well, they probably did a report and just refused to release it. This is an actual picture of one, but this was taken in 1966 from a Navy photographer, Leland Hemsen. But that's what the people were seeing. A lot of you know who Mark D'Antonia is too. He's the one that analyzes pictures on some of the shows, the UFO shows on the Travel Channel or History Channel. And I've known Mark for years and years. But he said in 1994 he was at sea on a submarine. He was working on a government project, and he said he ate too much spicy food the night before. So the place apparently to go is sonar if you're seasick. He was looking at the screen and talking to the sonar operator and saw this thing moving very fast across the screen. And he said, "What was that?" Well, they basically told him that it was what they referred to as a fast mover. He offered to investigate this for, because it was reported to the XO. And he said, "Well, XO, I can investigate this type of thing for you if you want." And he said, "Mark, are you having a good time and enjoying being on our boat?" He goes, "Yes, sir, I am." And he goes, "You want to stay?" So enough said, but Mark, and if you notice, a lot of times too, Mark will be on these shows and he'll debunk a lot of this stuff. But this one, he said, "I saw this. It was a fast mover and it was faster than anything I've seen." So this was a very reliable person, a report coming from somebody who people accuse Mark sometimes of debunking things a little bit quicker than he should. I love Mark. He's a great guy. And um, I think that makes the sighting very credible. I was on the MUFON cruise, a speaker, March 21st of 2019. This is Felipe. He was our guide. And, so this is March to the summer solstice. We're all wearing UFO shirts. I mean, we're on a MUFON cruise. It was, I guess, about 40 of us or so on this cruise ship. And this was Catalina, no, I'm sorry, Cozumel. So the guide was taking us, showing us, we didn't, usually I go diving in Cozumel, and he was taking us to ruins and little beaches and echo areas. And someone, before I even got a chance to, someone said, "Hey, have you ever seen a UFO here?" Well, he said that 20 years prior, he had this silver metallic object about the size of a small Volkswagen Beetle had come out from behind. We happened to be there, and he goes, "Right there, that area, that little island there." He said it came out from behind there, went up in the air, followed him all the way home. So he was driving along the coastline, looking at it in and out of the mango trees and then clear areas. And then when he made a right-hand turn to go to his house, it kept on in the water. Well, his cousin also worked as a tour guide and was following him home. And he said, "Did you see that silver ball following you?" And he said, "Yes, I did." So I also asked Felipe, I said, "Well, have you heard very much or seen anything else yourself?" And he said, "Well, that was the one instance that he did, but every fisherman that you talk to, every commercial fisherman has seen something strange, either coming in and out of the water or underwater, lights underwater, mysterious lights." And I said, "Well, the divers, I've been diving there in Cozumel a lot, and we'll go underwater at nighttime and we have our flashlights and we're swimming around the water and it looks like green glows moving around because you've got probably a dozen, 15 divers under there with flashlights." And he goes, "Oh, no, no, this was deep, deep, deep water." He said, "There's no reason for a commercial fisherman to be at 15, 20 feet. Oh, okay. So I started thinking, okay, so now we've got people that have heard things, they've seen things coming in and out of the water. What has anybody actually seen anybody? I found this online. I thought it was very interesting. It was taken from a research, merchant research submarine, and then later on they denied it. No one can verify it, but I really like the image because I remember seeing the video at the time. This thing just swam by in front of their window, and then now no one wants to say anything. But it's a very good description of what witnesses have seen underwater. This was November 23rd of 1977. And this was a report when I was working on the Stringfield files just recently. I found this, and even though it was reported to Leonard Stringfield in 1977, it actually happened a couple years prior. And there were two scuba divers. They were underwater in the Miami area. Now, I'd heard a lot of things, large creatures underwater in the Russian area, but never really near our own coastline. But these two divers were on a diving off of a yacht that used to be owned by President Truman. One of them was from the 1970s, a very famous scuba diver. And the other one was his friend who was an anthropologist. They were diving not all that deep, and they came across a 7-foot tall alien that was sitting on a rock, just sitting there. And so they started to get closer to it to get a better look of what in the world is that, because it didn't have dive gear or anything. It was just sitting on this rock. They said it had unusual ears, eyes, mouth, legs and arms, but they tried to approach to get a better look. And they said then it just looked at them, took off, started deeper in the water, descending deeper, turned its head, looked up at them, took a kind of a little glance at them, and then turned around and just kept on swimming down deeper and disappeared into the depths. You've probably heard me tell this story before about Lake Baikal, which is interesting. In 1982, there were 7 Russian divers. They were diving in the lake, and they were the equivalent um, of Navy SEALs. So they were training at an incredible depth of 165 feet, because as a scuba instructor, I teach recreational diving, which is 130-foot limit. So they're at 165 feet. They're, of course, doing training and tech diving. When they came across at 165 feet 4 humanoid-looking creatures. And so these creatures were 10 foot tall. There were 3 standing, or kind of like hovering, I guess, in back, one more toward the front, like it was the leader. So can you imagine now, you're at 165 feet, which it's very, very dark in a lake. So they've all obviously got flashlights. They're maneuvering, diving toward the area that they're going to train in, and they come across, in the dark, shining their lights on these 4 creatures. So they didn't have dive gear. They had silvery suits on. They had a helmet, but with some kind of a mouthpiece. Well, so naturally, the most common, the obvious thing to do would be to get the heck away from there. So they had to go back up to the surface, but unfortunately, at 165 feet, if any of you are a diver, you realize that you're not going to just go to the surface. So I'm not sure how long they were down there that deep, but they had to come up in levels. When I dove 145 feet, I believe, we came up for about 15 minutes to 50 feet. Then we came up to 25 feet. And then I had to stay at 15 feet for another 12 minutes. So as they're waiting and they're ascending in different levels to make sure that, they didn't get decompression sickness as they're coming up. Can you imagine they're knowing and realizing what is below them, these 10-foot creatures dressed in these silver suits? So it had to be kind of scary. They finally made their way to the surface. They reported what they saw, and their superiors in a couple days later said, "Okay, go back to the same area. You're going to try and catch these with a net." So they go down again with a net and decide, okay, we're going to bring one of these to the surface. I'm not exactly sure how they were even going to try and do that, because at that deep, they can't come up. They can't bring this thing up with them, because maybe an hour or so coming up slowly, ascending. So were they going to take a lift bag, which is a diver bag that you put air in? You can lift heavy things, fill it with air, and it immediately goes to the surface. I'm not exactly sure what the plan was, but as 2 of the 7 divers went forward to the lead alien, because they found them again, there they were, 3 behind, 1 closer to the front, tried to throw a net over them. The being, 10-foot tall being, put its arm straight out, and all of the divers went to the surface. As they hit the surface, 3 of them died almost immediately. 3 of the divers died almost immediately. The other 4 they took to decompression chambers. Unfortunately, they only had 2. 1 was broken, so they put all 4 divers in the one chamber, and only 1 survived. There was a hearing on it, and it was decided that they weren't going to dive that lake or another sister lake that wasn't all that far from it, because they'd had other reports of some strange things in that lake. So we know here in the Russian area, there's 10-foot tall beings that are living underwater, and this is back in the 80s. So we don't know for how long they've been here, but they're definitely not visitors. They're more residents. This was an article that was published. Oh, I can't see well because in 1984, in a Russian magazine. They're they were in the Baltic Sea, and they found unidentified, very large humanoid creatures that were swimming deep in, and had been for decades. So this was about Soviet submarines and what they had seen. And they said pretty much all through the 80s, but this was published in 1984, that the crew of a Soviet submarine saw these creatures, described them as human-like swimmers dressed in silver suits, 10 feet tall, swimming at ease at 1,300 feet. 1,300 feet. That's incredible. So there we go again. I mean, and this is in the Baltic Sea. The other one was in Lake Baikal. Whoop, come on. Whoops it. Okay, there we go. Here's another case. This was from a Soviet magazine. I'm not even going to try and read the name of that magazine, but this was published in Moscow in 1996. Shark hunter B. Borovikov, he was diving in the Anapa area and he witnessed several huge creatures heading toward him. He said they were about 8 meters away, swimming up from below. They had fish tails. They were milky white. Again, silvery looking, humanoid faces. One stopped and stared at him and had giant bulgy eyes. This one I found, I found several articles about giant bones, and I bought the book. I'm surprised too. I found it on Amazon, copyright 1940. And what this book told about were there were these Russian immigrants that came over. Well, I guess it would have been came over in probably the late 1920s, early 1930s, and they were trying to assimilate into the United States. So they were trying to learn English, and they were reading American books and trying to get a job. And they said, that they really didn't think it through. So this group of Russian immigrants all lived in this one community, and they would get together one day on the weekend and just all talk about stories, talk about how can we get through with this and how can we get a job. And they were saying, oh, we can't even understand how we thought we could come to the United States and get a job when we can't even speak English. And so they were all helping each other. But one of the fun things that they did, they'd have snacks, they'd get sandwiches and different types of things. They'd all tell stories about what, back in the home country and things that they did, and that would help them relax a little bit. And what George Papashevi, what he did was that he put them all together in a book. And in one chapter of it, I found it was a story about George. George said that he and three of his friends, and they were all 11 to 12 years old, he remembered they were kids back in Russia. One of the boys also brought his bear named Mishka, and they all went swimming in let's see, Kaheti. They hiked to the Turkey River, where it kind of makes into a small lake. And he said they were diving off of a ledge into a big hole. And what it was the boys snuck off, took the little bear with them, and decided they were going to go swimming. There had been kind of a drought area, so there was an area where they were able to get access to that usually you can't. So they all dove into the water. George dove in first, and then he noticed light, and so he thought, this is a cave. He thought it would be funny, and he swam into the cave, and he thought the other boys will think I drowned. Well, the other three boys followed him, and they all came up into this cave. When they looked around the cave, they were huge. He called it kind of where large humans go to die. I mean, he said the strangest thing, he was describing it in the book, that they had these bones. There were a lot of bones, and they had round heads the size of bushel baskets, a bulge over their forehead, eye holes so big your fist could go into, but they had straight, even teeth, leg bones as tall as the boys, 5 fingers on each hand, and they said that their legs were so long that they would have had a 6 foot stride had they not been dead, of course. So alive they would have been. One of the boys named Teddo took one of the little finger bones. And so he said, I imagine he still got it. So this was back in Russia. So now we've got bones found in a cave in a lake. I was fortunate enough a few years ago to talk to Jorge Martin about Puerto Rico, which also has some very strange creatures there. I looked on his website and I bought his book. The only thing that he wrote in English, everything else is in Spanish. And his phone number was there, and I just gave him a call and he answered. It was the greatest thing. But he gave me some pictures and told me from his website and told me some of the things that have been going on in Puerto Rico. He's started out a reporter, kind of like Linda Moulton Howe, and then became the lead UFO investigator for Puerto Rico. Now, this, he said he had looked at underwater topography, and once he put this on his website, they started disappearing. I don't know if you could see my mouse or not, but the top part of Puerto Rico, there's right in here, there's an area that like some kind of a building or canal or something underwater. The one right under where it says the southeast of Puerto Rico, underneath you can see a large area. That's Ponce. I've seen that. I can still see that on NOAA. But the large orange area on there, if you look at the picture all the way to the right on the bottom, it's pointing out the areas. It's in Spanish, but he said he's got reports of craft that come out of the water and go into a wormhole and vice versa. And at this point, he said he got a witness who saw the wormhole open up, which is that orange area, and a craft come down and go into the water. This was in Puerto Rico. This was an actual picture that was taken. It's a small killed creature that was killed by Jose Zayas. He was at the National Guard camp in a cave. And so this kid's just hunting around in this cave, just hiking it. It's a national park. And he said something grabbed him by the leg. And now here he is in this cave, and it scared the bejeebers out of him. He grabbed a stick that he found on the ground and just started beating on this and killed it. Well, then he felt bad. He thought, oh gosh, I just killed this little creature. Once he looked at it, he thought, this isn't an animal. It's like a little, like a humanoid little creature. So he took it to the police station, and Officer Oswald Santiago looked at it. He said, we need to take this to the mortuary. So he took it to Guido Morales, who owned the mortuary there, the funeral parlor, and the mortician placed it in a jar of formaldehyde. He described it as having white blondish hair on the sides of its large head, large transparent eyes with pupils like a cat, very long, thin arms, hands that reached its knees, four clawed, webbed fingers, and feet like flippers. And he said the creature didn't bleed. It was covered in kind of like a clear goo. So he said it had male genitals, but it wasn't a baby monkey or a human baby. And they got this one picture of it, and they said people from NASA came and confiscated it. And from what Jorge Martin had also told me was that that's not uncommon, that the military, our military, when they find something like this, very quickly comes over and confiscates things. This is an area, Laguna Cartagena in Puerto Rico, and it's known to have very strange sightings of things coming in and out of the water, but also very strange creatures in and around the area. I did some research on that and found out that it's kind of an irrigation area, that it's pretty well polluted. That might explain some of the creatures, but I would think that was anything that was indigenous to that area, and it was um, I guess, deformed from the chemicals, it would have died. There wouldn't be several sightings of whatever it was. But these are just a few of the sightings. In 1964, Schra and Quinn Ramirez saw two 7-foot tall white men with long blonde hair, silvery tight-fitting suits. Then on August 31st of 1990, Miguel Figueroa and many others saw 5 creatures walking down the road. They were skinny, grayish, pear-shaped heads, slits for mouths, long arms, 3 fingers, 3 toes. He said he followed them to the car, and one of the creatures emitted a bright light like a welding torch from his eyes toward him and then took off. There's also similar creatures that were reported in the Caribbean National Forest. And in 1991, police officer Luis Torres and his wife and 2 other officers and their wives saw 2 creatures that were walking down Route 191. They said they were 4-foot tall, green grayish skin suits with hoods, arms to their knees, large elongated heads, dark eyes. Torres drew his gun for protection, and the creatures ran out of sight. Then August 13th of 1991, Camacho saw the same creatures, and they were stealing the plants from the front of her house. She had little plant boxes, and these creatures were just pulling them out and running off with them. And in 1991, Ulysses Perez saw the same creatures near an irrigation canal, and they were also pulling flowers and running off with them. Chupacabra. Jorge Martin had told me that they have found several little chupacabra, and once again, he said the government comes and takes them and says they're NASA and they grab whatever they find. So he said you don't keep them for very long. But this was a newspaper article that was in Puerto Rico. Also, Brazil has a lot of reports of chupacabra. But I found that the first sighting of them in Puerto Rico was in 1995. They're described as having 3 or 4 clawed fingers on their hands, 2 elongated red eyes, small nostrils, fanged teeth, long tongue, coarse black hair, almost like oh gosh, oh gosh, not like a cow, but kind of coarse furry, I guess, wild animal hair. Oh, like a Bigfoot. They describe what the Bigfoot hair would be like, but nothing that we're used to seeing. But some of us said they thought they were chameleon, uh, like brown, green, that they changed color to green, gray, light brown, beige. Some of them thought that they could fly. So I don't know if they were flying or just jumping out of trees and gliding. They feed on animal mutilations, which there's a lot in the area that's where people have seen them, that they'll have a goat or a sheep and it's mutilated and there's these little strange prints. And he said several of these he thinks have been captured by the US government and then taken for, I guess, for research. So I thought, okay, so we've got these strange animals. We've got things underwater. We've got bases underwater. We've got things coming in and out of the water. And I thought, I wonder if anybody has actually been abducted and taken underwater. Well, so I started doing research on that. And one of the first ones I found, this was in August of 1956, Orlando Jorge Ferrati. He was 18 years old and he was night fishing on a beach near Buenos Aires, and he said he was approached by a 7 foot tall humanoid. It had white skin, light colored eyes, short hair, wore a tight fitting yellow hooded overall, and mentally told him, well, don't be afraid. He said this thing opened a box that lit up the whole area. And when it did, he could see this craft, a saucer-shaped craft that was coming from the water, headed right toward him. The craft hovered, let down this ramp, and he was led inside. When he got in there, he saw this one girl. Her name was Elena. She was from San Luis. He thought she was about 5 or 6 years younger than him. So, I mean, he's 18. And he said that the aliens mentally told him that their clothes were contaminated and would make them sick. So a female he thought was a female alien led Elena away, and the male or the other alien, took him to a room and they took their clothes from him and gave them overalls, kind of like what the aliens were wearing. And they put the contaminated clothes, they said, into what looked like a TV filled with green smoke. Okay, so if you think about 1956 and any old movies that you've seen, and you see the TVs, and they're kind of like in this wood cabinet with maybe like a 14 by 12 screen, the old original old TVs. And then you think about that's why he was thinking they look like that they put them in what looked like a TV filled with green smoke. But think about our washers and dryers now. If you've got a stackable or your washable, they're front loading, and then anything that's spinning in there drying or washing, it sounds like they were trying to describe a front loader washing machine. But they gave him the other clothes to wear, and then he said that they took him underwater. They emerged low off of the coast of Uruguay, and then they were in and out of the water, basically back and forth across the Atlantic to Africa. And they would come up and go down and up and down. And finally, he said, "Why do we keep going up and down and up and down?" Underwater. And he said, well, they were taking precautions because they didn't want to look like invaders. And so they were hiding underwater as much as they could. But it seemed to me like they weren't able to negotiate underwater the entire trip. They go a ways, come up, and then go back under again. They said that the aliens that they told the couple that they'd been on Earth, and in 1950 they had built 2 underwater bases. So then the couple were taken to a base in the Gulf of Mexico, That one they said looked like an Eskimo igloo, and then the aliens told them they used that one to recondition their ships. This is a, and then, then they remember that's it. A lot of these they don't remember anymore. Then all of a sudden they're back. So, the story kind of ends. Linda Porter, this is a very famous abductee. In 1961, she reported that she was abducted at the age of 15, taken to an underwater alien base at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of California near Santa Barbara. She said that under uh, there were two three-story buildings, basically, and that the reason that no one can see them is they were camouflaged with an electronic net of some type, so that fish couldn't see them, submarines couldn't see them. I guess I don't think swimmers would be that deep in the water, but she said it was completely camouflaged. That would make a lot of sense to why nobody is discovering these bases. She's so this is a picture that she drew of herself. She said that there was this lit room that she was being led into, and she said it was this very tall being that looked like he was a praying mantis. And he was talking to her, but she said that at first he didn't say anything, or it didn't say anything because it was afraid that she would be afraid of it. So it was very, very cautious. But she said eventually it started communicating with her, but unfortunately she doesn't remember anything that it had said at the time. She also had numerous encounters through her teens and 20s, and on February 28th of 1991, she reached out to Linda Moulton Howe and sent her a package that had audio cassette and a letter and drawings. Linda helped her get some regression therapy, and then she remembered numerous encounters. She remembers being motion sickness, sometimes being transported through interdimensional tunnels. And then what I thought was interesting, remember she was taken at age 15. She was taken again at age 17. And somewhere between age 15 and age 17, they had realized that she had a diseased heart. They cloned a replacement for her, put this in some kind of a transparent tube, and then when she was taken at the age of 17, her essence was taken out of her diseased body and put into the cloned one. She said she was told it was called resurrection technology. Oh, let's see, did I go? Okay. This is another sighting. Betty Andreessen. This one I found out that Rob and Sue Switek had worked on this through the years. They'd actually known her and interviewed her. But Betty was in her kitchen. She was just in her kitchen cooking. She had 7 children. They were all from the age of 3 to 11. Her mother and her father, and all of them except for her, they were all in the living room. And she said it was about 6:30 at night, and the lights at the house all blinked. She said there was this red light that kind of beamed through the kitchen window, and with the lights blinking like that. Well, her dad ran to the front to look out to see what was causing this. She said then the house went dark. So she ran to the children to comfort them. And the father ran into the kitchen and he's looking out the window. And first he was in the living room. Then he ran to the kitchen. He's looking out all the windows trying to figure out what this is. He goes back over and he sees that they're coming, and these 5 beings are coming in a hopping motion. They're coming toward to the front door. The front door is wooden, and these creatures, so here they are scared to death. The creatures come right through the wood door like it wasn't solid at all. So the entire family, except for Betty, were put in some type of suspended animation. And Betty was taken away by the aliens inside a waiting craft that she said was about 20 foot in diameter, classic saucer shape. And then that craft joined a mother craft. She was taken, she said, underwater, given a physical examination, underwater to some kind of a base, given a physical examination, and returned home. She said was 4 hours later. But when she returned home, she said the whole family was still in this suspended animation, and there was a being in there in the house with them. And so she asked, she said, why was this being there with them? And they said, well, they wanted to make sure that her family wasn't injured while they were gone. So I guess in suspended animation, they kept someone there watching over them. 8 years later, she answered an ad from J. and Hynek for regression, and he published a 528-page account of some of the things that happened to her. These are a couple of the pictures that she drew from her memories of being walked away of the aliens. Just you can see the pictures there, just kind of really interesting drawings. She said she remembered in one case there was a gray leader that was 5 foot tall and the others were only 4 foot tall. They had a pear-shaped head, wide eyes, small ears and nose, a slit for a mouth. They wore blue coveralls with white belt and boots. Had a logo of a bird on the sleeve, hands that had 3 fingers, and the creatures didn't walk, they floated. Now, if you noticed all through this, there's a lot of descriptions of where these alien beings actually have clothes. And most of the time, when you think about an alien, you think of Close Encounters, you've got all these little grays and they're naked. You don't see genitals or anything. A lot of these witnesses are saying they actually have some type of clothing on. Now, in the fall of 1945, regressing back, she remembered that she saw a circular object that landed. She felt paralyzed and found herself in a white room with 3 small beings. She said the aliens placed light globes around her, and she said she experienced these flashing lights and this spinning motion. This stuff is all lights and flashes and everything going around her. She said while all this is going on, she said that the craft that she was in went plunging into a body of water, then rose above it. And she said she realized that they were approaching the inside of an icy cave. On another occasion, she said she saw a glass dome above her, and she was flying in an object that plunged into the water again off the U.S. coast. This is a quote from her book. All of these, when you see the book there, I bought all the books and made sure I got the exact account from the witnesses. But Betty, this is a quote from her. She said, "It's going so fast. Oh, it feels like I'm staying still. I'm tilted a little. Oh, there's water coming up. Oh." Well, she kind of thought she was going to drown. And then she said the water was rolling around and she realized that she was in some kind of a tube. She was taken to a large aquatic base that she was told it was a museum of life, and there were examples of humans in glass containers from all these different eras in our history. This I thought was so interesting. This is Captain William Schaefer. Um, he he was in September of 1970. He was off Yorkshire off the British coast, driving or flying a fighter jet that had scrambled to intercept a UFO that had been picked up on radar. So they're up there. Basically, he's got a catfight going on with this UFO off Flamborough Head, and the last they heard, he had disappeared from radar, crashed into the North Sea. So he's reporting back that there's a UFO. They're fighting back and forth. He's not firing at it, but he's chasing this thing, and then he loses control, ends up crashing into the Northern Sea. So they looked for him. They didn't find him. It took them 3 months. Finally, 3 months later, they were finally able to recover the craft. They found the jet at the bottom of the sea, undamaged. Now, this craft, his which is behind him, let's see, it's a Foxtrot 94 Royal Air Force Lightning fighter jet, went into the water at a high rate of speed and had no damage. Not only did it not have any damage when they found it sitting on the bottom floor of the ocean, but the cockpit canopy was still shut, and he wasn't in it. So there was no sign of his body. The family didn't believe this. They tried suing the government over this. They didn't believe the report. They wanted to know what happened to his body. But can you even imagine that? Not only was the craft not damaged, he wasn't in it. And so they basically referred to this as an abduction of Captain William Schaefer. Actually, it's a Schaffner. I'm sorry, Captain William Schaffner. This is another pilot that was abducted from Puerto Rico in 1972. Actually, this was, well, to start with, in 1971, it's David DeMundo. He was a commercial airline pilot in Puerto Rico for a Puerto Rican airliner. He saw greenish blue lights, kind of lens-shaped luminous objects that were close to his flight, and they were flying around. So when he landed, he reported this to air traffic control, then to his airline, and he also unfortunately did a newspaper interview. When he did that, they fired him. So a year later, 1972, he said he's standing um in his house, and all of a sudden this strange human-like creature is standing beside him. He said, I don't have any idea how he arrived. I was just in my house standing, and all of a sudden there was this creature. He said it was 5 foot 3 inches tall, thin lips, nub for a nose, green wide wraparound oval eyes. He said it had a one-piece gray uniform with a U emblem on it. It was wearing a turban headdress with 10 to 12 pointed stars on the front of it. So he said he was taken to a 30-foot diameter craft that was the inside was lit green and it had 4 chairs and a control panel. Um, the aliens told the Mundo that they came from someplace near Orion. So he said he was taken to this craft, which submerged 35 miles southwest from where his location was, and then it descended down to 9,000 feet. Um, he said matter was displaced on this mountain underwater, and he entered a dry cave where there were 25 other craft. Now, I'd heard that also, Mount Hayes, where people say these craft head right toward the mountain, these strange craft, and then it's just like everything goes kind of fuzzy, and they go right into the mountain, and then it just turns back into the mountain again. So, I guess a good explanation for that is just matter is displaced. So he said he was fed a strange meal and told that there were 83 other contactees that were also in there with him. So he's in a cave with 25 other UFOs and 83 other human contactees. He said um, they had told him that through 1976, now this is 1972, that they were going to build 6 additional underwater camps and have them completed by 1976. What I thought was also very interesting was they told him, now this is a report from the 1970s. The aliens change out every 6 months. Um, they do that on the International Space Station. They don't like them to stay there longer than 6 months. And I thought it was interesting that the aliens underwater are changing out every 6 months. He asked them why Puerto Rico, and they said, well, it's highly magnetic and it helps them trap energy that's needed to leave the atmosphere. This one, very famous, Pascagoula River, Mississippi, October 11th of 1973. You've probably heard about this. Charles Hickman, 42, and Calvin Parker, 18. They were a couple dock workers that were taken aboard a craft. Well, this is some newspaper articles about it, but they said there was a blue light that was illuminated the whole area, and a bell-shaped object came down below them, just barely above the ground. Uh, Charles Hickman, he saw it first, and he said this thing was 30 foot long, 8 to 10 feet high, football shaped, the dome on the top. He said then the door opened and these 3 beings glided out. They grabbed him under his arms, and the other being grabbed Calvin Parker, who was only 18 at the time. He said that Parker almost immediately fainted, and he was pretty much awake and remembered everything that was going on. He said these humanoid beings had no neck, pointed 2 inch long nose, slit for a mouth, long arms, hands that resembled mittens with a thumb. Their legs remained together like elephant feet. They had grayish, wrinkled bodies, and they said that the eyes were almost blocked by this flap of skin that came down. They were taken aboard the craft, and he said examinations were done on both of them as they both laid paralyzed, and so they weren't able to move around at all. And if I had more time, I can go on and tell you, that they eventually they went to the police station and reported this, and no one believed them until other reports of the same that happened in the same area started coming forward. Now, this is another book that I just bought. I have Calvin Parker. Let's see, Hickman's. Let's see, Hickman's book, and then Calvin Parker came out with a book more recently. I believe he just passed. Let's see, make sure I get him right here. Yeah, Calvin Parker. He just passed away not too long ago, but they both have books out. This is another book that's released that gives a little bit more information about this, which I could go on for one whole 2-hour presentation just on this. But across the river, there was Maria Blair, and Jerry Blair. Now, Maria was putting clothes in the boat. They were going to go night fishing. And so she saw this blue-green lights in the sky and searching around. And then she heard a splash, and she said this humanoid thing came up. She's on the dock putting these clothes in, and this thing comes up out of the water, humanoid. And she said it had on a like a diver's suit, a wetsuit, but it didn't have any dive gear. And then she said it just kind of went underneath the water and disappeared. Well, her husband, Jerry, said, That's not really what happened. He said there were two creatures and they were 6 foot tall. They were at the end of the pier. He said they grabbed him and started taking him toward the craft, toward a craft that was floating in the sky. And he watched his wife as another creature grabbed her and also took her. So she just remembers the creature going back underwater. And he says, No. We all three were floated above the water and taken into this craft, just like the other two gentlemen. He says examinations were done on them both. They were taken back to the pier right next to the boat. He watched these creatures float away back across the river and back into their ship. And he said then it shot off into the air at a high rate of speed. Well, a month later, like just a couple days shy of a month later, I found this newspaper article, submerged objects spotted in river where two saw a UFO. So this was Raymond Ryan and his brother. Well, first of all, it was Raymond. He's age 42. He saw this object underwater while he was fishing in the Pascagoula River. He said it was a light underwater and just moving around his boat. So he starts beating at it with an oar, and it would go dimmer and get brighter and dimmer and brighter. So he went and got his brother from the shore, Ramey, who is his twin brother. They went back out and they're poking at it with this oar and they're smacking at it. And finally they decided, okay, there's something going on underwater. So they called the Coast Guard. And at 9:40 p.m., the Coast Guard dispatched a 16-foot boat. They located this object, which it's in 4 to 6 foot of water, moving 4 to 6 knots. But the Coast Guard, this was their description: an amber beam, 4 to 6 inches in diameter, attached to a bright metal object. They tried to retrieve it. It would go out, move away, then reappear. They had traveled several different courses within an hour. So this was referred to the Coast Guard as an unidentified submerged illuminating object. And this report was forwarded to Washington, D.C. Fred Valenche, he also disappeared. There's another pilot, 20-year-old pilot from Southeast Australia. He was 125 nautical miles off of over by Bass Strait, and he was headed to King Island. He radioed into Melbourne air traffic control about this unknown craft that was at 1,000 feet above him. He said this thing, it had no markings. It was just this slick craft without any wings. And he's reporting in saying this thing, he said it came down lower and his airplane was vibrating. He said so it was vibrating so hard, so rough that he could barely speak. So he's talking in a panic voice, telling air traffic control, something's over me. Something's, it's hovering over me. I don't know what to do. It's not an airplane. And he's all in this panic. He's a 20-year-old fairly new pilot. And then that was it. They never heard any more from him. The last sound that they heard was some kind of a chilling screeching of metal on metal. They searched the region and he was never found. There were several witnesses in the area that reported seeing strange lights at the time. But some of them, because I also found a gentleman that investigates that area, and he believes that there's an alien base and in the Bass Strait. He wrote a whole online article about it. This is Filberto Cardenas. And on January 3rd of 1979, he was basically taken. And how the story goes that he was in Gila, Florida, and his friend Fernando Marty wanted, it's kind of funny, he wanted to buy a pig. Now, this is January 3rd of 1979. This is right after Christmas, and so he wanted to buy a pig and roast it. And his car wasn't big enough, so he talked to his friend Filberto, talked to his friend who had a little auto shop. And he said, okay, can we use your station wagon and can we go and pick up this pig? And he goes, yeah, sure, I'm not doing anything. So Fernando brought his wife Myrta and their daughter, 13-year-old daughter Isabel, and the four of them took off, and they're driving these backcountry roads over by Gila, Florida, looking for farms that had pigs that they could still purchase to roast, and a lot of them didn't have them anymore. So finally, they decided they gave up. They couldn't get a pig. So they're heading back toward home, and the car just stopped. And these are newspaper articles here where they're reenacting it on the top picture. The car just stopped for no reason. So the gentlemen both get out, and Myrta and Isabel also get out of the car, and they're picking flowers, and they're just waiting while they get this car fixed. And then all of a sudden they hear this strange sound, and there's a reflection of red and violet kind of in the area. So the mom and the daughter get back into the car, and then they hear these strange sounds of like swarming bees. So now the whole car begins to shake violently. Myrta gets on top of her daughter Isabel to protect her, and both men just become paralyzed and can't move. Fernando watches Filiberto get lifted into the sky, and he's into a craft, and he's just gone. Well, they look around for him. It's kind of a long story. They eventually do find him, but not for several hours later. But in the meantime, Filiberto wakes up on a UFO. He's taken and shown an underwater alien base near Miami where he sees three strange figures. He's taken to a smaller ship where he sees a beach approaching, and then the UFO plunges into the Pacific Ocean. Now, they were on the Atlantic Ocean. Now he's plunging into the Pacific Ocean. He could see a tunnel underwater, which this ship entered, and he emerged in a place that was completely dry. He was welcomed by a humanoid-looking figure that said that he was from Earth and had long worked with these alien beings. He was taken on a quick tour to an undersea alien city and then returned to a pasture 10 miles away from the spot, which actually he was returned to the pasture. He couldn't hardly see. He was kind of blinded from the bright light that dropped him down carefully. It didn't injure him. But when he opened his eyes, he was almost blinded. He wandered onto a highway and ended up in the median and was picked up by a passerby. I never knew that Ed Waters from Gulf Breeze had an encounter, but this is the craft, Gulf Breeze. This is a sighting that was investigated by MUFON, and people think that maybe it was a hoax, maybe it was not. But this is a picture that he took. This was Florida, 1987. It's a very famous sighting. The photos were analyzed by Bruce Maccabee, but I had no idea that Bud Hopkins had also interviewed Ed Walters and found out that Ed had been abducted. Ed remembered rising high into the sky over the coastline and then a quick descent and passing beneath the water. He said he was gasping for air. He thought he was going to drown, but he was in some type of a container. He said as he's moving down deep in the water, he could see water and fish from this diamond-shaped window that was in whatever he was in. He remembers numerous bubbles passing by the window, followed by sand that was kind of, as they landed, moving up and covering the glass. Not sure how I'm doing here for time. So this is another sighting into the water. Linda Napa Latino, which actually in the book, she's Linda Cortell. That was her alias. And on November 30th of 1989 at 3 a.m., she was in bed next to her husband and 41-year-old woman in Manhattan, New York. And she woke up, there was a figure standing at the foot of her bed. She's on the 12th floor of her apartment building in Manhattan. And she said this figure, she's all the doors and windows, everything were locked. She was taken right out through the window by three alien beings and floated up into the air into this craft up into the bottom of it. It was disc-shaped craft, and there was an opening in the bottom. She said they took her into this craft. It made a really sharp turn, and it crashed into the East River right near Pier 17. She said they came to a sudden stop underwater, and she could see out through the window. She said that it was kind of funny. She said, this is the East River, and she said it was trash floating by, plastic bags and bottles, and she said it was just nasty, dirty looking. I think if I was being abducted by aliens, I don't know if I would be noticing the trash and everything going by, but I thought that was pretty good that she had a pretty good memory of all this stuff and, like, oh my gosh, look how dirty the water is. Um, she was taken to an examination room where there were several strange creatures. She said she described them as basically the typical grays. They had her laying on a large examination table, and she said they were all around her. So she said she just started screaming and yelling and fighting them. Um, so she's fighting, I guess she thinks, for her life, and one of these aliens puts its hand over her mouth and keeps her quiet until the procedure was over. Then she said the next thing she remembers, she was back in her bedroom, laying in bed next to her husband, who's still asleep. In the meantime, coming across the bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, were supposedly Richard and Dan. That's the names that they were given. They said they were working as bodyguards to the United Nations Secretary General Javier Perez de Calar. They were driving across the bridge at the same time, and they said their car just stopped for no reason, just stopped. So they got out of the car. They're looking around and they see this woman coming out of the 12-story window of this apartment building, being led by three creatures and put into the bottom of this large hovering craft that they said they watched it descend into the East River near Pier 17. Months later, though, they contacted Linda Cortell and Bud Hopkins. By now, Linda had contacted Bud Hopkins, and he was helping her try and remember some of what was going on through some regression. And now they claimed that they were police officers who witnessed the incident from underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. So now they've changed their story, maybe because they didn't want anyone to know that they were guards, bodyguards from the United Nations. But then it gets worse. In April of 1991, both men, they kidnapped Linda Cortell. They drug her. She's walking along the road. They drug her into the car and kidnapped her. They took her and interrogated her for several hours, trying to find out what she remembered, what she knew, if she was involved, if this was multiple times that this had happened, and on and on and on. Bud Hopkins thought these men were either the CIA or FBI. He interviewed them several times, but then he was also threatened. So this goes on. Bud Hopkins' book Witnessed tells a detail of some of the really incredible things that went on with this sighting. In the meantime, though, here's someone else. Janet Kimball claimed that her car also stalled on the Brooklyn Bridge at the same time. She said she never thought any more about it until the story came out. She goes, "Well, I saw that." She thought she was watching the filming of a movie, and this was special effects. Now, in the book, her book, Anna Jamerson, Connections, she said that she's got reoccurring dreams over several years throughout high school and college, mostly driving her car, and then it breaks down, it goes down a hill into the water. She said she's got another dream where she was taken from an island beach that she used to visit. She remembers being terrified of small gray beings. She also remembered a huge ocean liner coming at her bow first. So she's underwater and she could see the bow of the ship coming toward the craft that she was in. Um, and the craft, she said, described it. It was black on the bottom, white above, and she saw colors of red and blue. She also remembered floating down a long tunnel with soft sides and a green light at the end. So a kind of a lot of sketchy memories of being underwater and of alien beings. In junior high, she was at the beach with her mother, and this storm came up with this fog. She said all the other swimmers got out of the water, but for some reason her mom decided that she was going to stay. So there they are with the storm coming up, this strange looking fog, and all of a sudden they found themselves taken aboard this alien craft. She remembered two grays that took away her mother, and then she was led by another one to a separate room that had a large viewing screen that she wasn't sure if it was underwater or if it was a projector, but she knows that they were underwater. And they told her, well, you must study the creatures of water. So she did. As a teen, she had fish tanks all over her house. She was awarded first prize in the science fair for her collection and knowledge and management of tropical fish. At the age of 14, her dad taught her how to scuba dive, and her college major was marine biology. Katharina Wilson, 1985, she wrote this book, Alien Jigsaw, some of the encounters that she had underwater. September 10th of 1989, off the Pensacola, Florida Gulf Coast. She said she remembers standing with four beings out over the water behind her house. And then she was somewhere else in a strange craft. She so she's in this craft and she's given, as she's sitting down, a 5 foot tall gray kitten to care for. Now, I've heard of a 5 foot tall owl, but I had never heard of someone being handed a 5 foot tall gray kitten. So they moved around underwater. She looked out the window and they came up to where there was a snowy mountain range. She said the craft landed at this base, and she said then the aliens took the kitten from her and said they had to do an examination on it. She also had an implanted memory of abuse of baby seals and dolphins and told not to eat fish, to eat other food sources. I thought, this is just really weird, except this book was endorsed by Bud Hopkins, John Carpenter, Donald Ware, Vicki Lyons, and Wendell Stevens. This is the first time I'd seen the inside of a Tic Tac that was drawn by a witness. Um, but she said on June 17th of 1992 in Portland, Oregon, she was with her boyfriend. Um, she said they were basically they were teenagers or young people. They went parking, and so she and Eric were taken aboard a Tic Tac shaped craft. She said they flew low over the Pacific Ocean, and then she said they were flying sideways and upside down. So there's the drawing of her. For some strange reason, they're underwater, spinning around. She stands up and decides she's going to kick the window out and try and escape. And that's a picture of her, she drew of herself doing that. She said they landed on a large object that was on top of the water. Finally, they submerged and landed on this. But she said inside this craft there were 8 cushioned gray seats on each side. It was a 5 foot wide aisle, brown metal floor. She said a room in the rear of the craft, and there was a cockpit in front with a navigator. She said the craft was 50 to 60 feet long and about 12 foot wide. She said she and Eric were handed a black-eyed baby with large eyes to care for during the trip. Then she remembers being taken back to her car in the woods. And so her and Eric both woke up the next morning still in the car, and both of them had the same memories. They started comparing what happened overnight, and they remembered this. They also remember, though, there were people there that looked like either the Navy or foreign military. They remember seeing military type uniforms.
We got about 25 minutes left, so you're doing good. Thank you.
Oh, okay, about 25 minutes?
Yeah,
Oh,
about that.
oh, okay. I don't think I'll take that long. Maybe I'll have time for questions and answers. But so this is the conclusion I've come to. I took this picture. We were at 100 feet. The person that's horizontal is my son-in-law, Roger. So you can see him equalizing. I can always tell how deep. When I hit 88 feet, I feel pressure on my chest. I always know I'm at 88 feet, and then I can kind of pressurize and I'm fine. But this is some of the explanations on why. I mean, how have alien life forms existed on Earth for centuries without being detected? We can't go really deep comfortably, even in submarines or, the diving bells or mini subs or anything. But one place that they can hide are long, narrow depressions in the bottom of the ocean, which are called trenches. These trenches are located between our tectonic plates. They average about a mile and a half deep. The deepest one though is the Mariana Trench, which is 7 miles deep. So some very, very, very deep areas that we can't access, and if we can, we can't for very long. Now remember this, we're trying to equalize at 100 feet deep. They remember the alien beings that were seen from the submarine that were at 1,300 feet, swimming around with no problem. So what do we really know is hidden beneath the water? Well, this is a picture of my cruise ship. I'm there in Cozumel. I'm the diver all the way to the right. I had someone else take this picture for me. This is a plane that was crashed in the 1970s for a movie. The plane is we swim right almost to this cruise ship. So from the cruise ship, you can look off to from the front of the ship off to the left, you can look and see bubbles in the water. We're only diving 22 feet deep. From the top of that cruise ship, I couldn't see the divers in the water. If you're on the top of the water, you can't see the divers in the water, only 22 feet deep. You have so much reflection from the sky, movement of the water. And now if you put on a snorkel mask and you look down and you're right over the top of them, yeah. In Cozumel, you can see there's about 75-foot visibility. But from that ship looking down, you can't see these people in the water. And I tried looking from every single deck when I went back the next time. This is how easy it is to hide underwater. This is another cruise that I took. This was the second cruise I'd ever been on, January 25th of 2006, Royal Caribbean Explorer of the Seas. We had been all day diving. I had been all day diving in St. Martin. We're headed to St. Thomas, left the port, and I hadn't seen anything. It was only my second cruise, first time to St. Martin. So what am I doing? I'm taking pictures as we leave port. Everybody else is changing. They're either going to the 6:30 dinner or they're changing for the 8:30 dinner. I had already come in and changed and showered because they put me back on the ship at 4:30. So as we leave, we're about 20 minutes out from shoreline, and there's not much to take pictures anymore. I look over to the right. I guess that'd be, let's see, for at starboard side of the ship, walking toward the bow over to we were headed to basically there's a little bar restaurant there waiting for our turn to eat. Schooner Bar. That's where my husband and the rest of our group was. And I look over and this is what I see in the water. Now, this isn't blown up. You can see the picture on the left. That's actually how it was. There's the railing. I wasn't looking through plexiglass or anything. And I didn't see the one at the top that looks like it was in a cloud coming in. I saw the two at the bottom. They were about the size of a small, like a sedan car, like a little Nissan. They were moving kind of back and forth and, shifting back and forth, but hovering maybe 8-10 foot above the water. And the water, you could see the waves there. It's pretty rough. This ship was moving fast. So my first reaction was to turn around and look behind me because I thought, what is reflecting on the water from the ship? I turned back around and we're leaving them behind. I ran and got two pictures. This one was the best one, but you can see the blow up there on the right. That's what they look like. I mean, and you can see there's like a little steam or something on the top on that bright yellowish area. Um, I have no idea. They reset my camera. When I looked at my pictures later, it was everything from that day on, from January 25th. The picture started at February 5th. So it reset my camera several days and several hours into the future. I asked everybody I could on the ship. They wouldn't let me talk to the captain, trying to find out. No one saw him but me because everybody was going to go to dinner or was dressing for dinner. All the crew that was on board were gathering up chairs and towels but I did get a picture, so I could prove that I actually saw these. So I'm diving all day long in St. Martin. We get 20 minutes out and I see a UFO. I'm in the right place, I guess, at the right time because they sure weren't where I was diving. Move on. Now, this was Catalina Island. I'll let it go here real quick. So there's all these sightings off of Catalina Island. And if you look really quick, I just turned on my night vision camera right there. I don't know if you could see that, but I think it was a meteor that came down, but it's just really exciting when you turn on your night vision camera. You only go that far and something falls out of the sky. I thought, oh, that's just fun. See if I can get it to, whoop, let me go back. See if I can get it to start again really quick. There we go. But Catalina Island is very, very, very well known for UFO sightings. And I told you about the one where there were 200 of them. And then just watch right between these trees. There it drops. While we were there, I talked to some people, A Tear in the Sky. That's a very, very good, I think that's on Netflix. It's a very good video to watch. They had set up, they're on Catalina Island and then also on Laguna Beach. With the camera crews, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment triangulating. It gives it away, Terror in the Sky, because toward the end, they actually tape something on Catalina Island, and then they talk with the people that are in Laguna Beach, And they go, yeah, we saw this go into this anomaly. They cross-checked it with NOAA, and it was the only thing in the sky that it was orangish, kind of like a cloud. It's really interesting to watch, but they caught a lot of things, that strange movements and unknown unidentified objects in and around Catalina Island on this video. So I went January 21st of 2023. That was my birthday. My sisters and I went on the trip. And they said that in December, a crew had just left and that they were videotaping for part 2 of Terror in the Sky. So what's going on with this? We know there's stuff going on. Is the government telling us anything? Maybe. I don't know. July 26th of 2023, there was hearings on disclosure. David Grush testified under oath before the House Oversight Committee. The pilot, David Fravor, and Ryan Graves, who's another one of the pilots that saw these UAPs when they were on the Nimitz in November of 2004. Grush was answering questions from Congress about otherworldly sightings and the need for more congressional authority over the Pentagon's UFO programs. He also said that he knows of people that have been physically harmed for cover-up, and that the U.S. government was in possession of 12 alien craft and the remains of non-human pilots. Because he was asked about that, they said, what about the pilots? I think it was Representative or Congresswoman Luna that asked him, and he said, I can't talk about that. We'll have to talk about that in the SCIF, which is a very secure area that they talk about secret information. You give up your cell phones. You can't have any paper or pad or anything. You can go in there, look at secret information. You sign a release that you can't talk about it, and you come back out. You have no way to record it. But they know there were remains of non-human pilots. This came out, Jeremy Corbell. Now, there's been some controversy with MUFON. They think they may or may not have identified it, that it may be a hoax. Jeremy Corbell said that it was an object that flew over a base in Iraq. They named it the jellyfish UAP. It was flying over the base at a consistent speed, moving in one direction. This was filmed over the Persian Gulf at night, but they don't want to tell exactly where. They tried to say that it submerged into Lake Hibernia, but we can't find that lake on the maps. But Jeremy Corbell said he saw the continuation of the video that came out. This is just still pictures. He saw the continuation. He said it went underwater, and after 17 minutes, it came out of the water at such a high rate of speed, if you blinked, you missed it. You couldn't even get it on videotape. He said it also had signatures that were normally associated with propulsion maneuvers that were absent. He said it displayed positive lift without typical aerodynamic means for lift and thrust. I mean, he said it was a true anomaly. So then we had another hearing, November 13th of 2024. It's called The Unidentified Anonymous Phenomena Exposing the Truth. Lou Elizondo, a former military intelligence, made it clear. He said, we are not alone in the cosmos. He actually talked about how he believes some of this was interdimensional, and some of them that the creatures were actually here, that there are alien beings here, because he's been asked several times, to where you think they come from. He says, what makes you think they're coming from someplace else? Witnesses reinforce the fact that many of the sightings are of objects that are in the water. And so here we have Rear Admiral Gondolet. Let's see, Gondolet. I'm terrible at names. Lou Elizondo, Michael Schellenberger, the founder of Public. Oh, and Michael Gold, NASA, my favorite. Yeah. Michael Gold, all he did through this hearing was basically say, well, we've taken a lot of footage. NASA's taken all this footage. And if anybody wants to watch it, thousands of hours, you might see anything. But so far, we don't really have anything reported. Yeah, where was he when Gordon Cooper was reporting stuff back in the 70s? Also, and here he is, astronaut Gordon Cooper. Back in 1978, the UN had a big hearing on UFOs. And from Grenada, there was, Ambassador Griffin from Grenada was was kind of chairing these hearings, trying to bring out to the public that there were UFO sightings. This appears a paragraph that was taken from the letter that was written to him, to the ambassador from Gordon Cooper. I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crew are visiting the planet from other planets. which obviously are a little more technically advanced than we are here on Earth. I feel that we need to have a top-level coordinated program to scientifically collect and analyze data from all over the world, all over the Earth concerning any type of encounter and to determine how best to interface with these visitors in a friendly fashion. We may first have to show them that we have learned to resolve our problems by peaceful means rather than warfare. That was written by Gordon Cooper. Also, on May 30th of 1976, from the Leonard Stringfield files, astronaut Gordon Cooper told Stringfield of a recent meeting of NASA personnel. Dr. Fletcher of NASA informed those assembled that we now have a preponderance of hard evidence that Earth is under surveillance by extraterrestrials. Cooper said he expected the information to be emblazoned across the nation's headlines the next morning, but there was nary a word. And there's another article up there. Gordon Cooper was very, very vocal about the sightings, very upfront about a lot of the sightings that were going on. He also had one of the other Stringfield, if you were at the MUFON Symposium, I talked about this. He also told Stringfield that we had harnessed energy, that we had learned free energy, and that never got released either. And that was in the 1970s. The free energy was taught to us on how to capture it from tectonic plates, the space in the trenches. So maybe that's why they're going down that deep too. Maybe they're grabbing our energy. So NASA, of course, NASA has no interest, but I found these two books. There's a government book website that you could go on. 1971 Summer a Facility Fellowship Program in Engineering Systems Design. The primary objective of Project Cyclops to access what would be required in hardware, manpower, time, and funding to mount a realistic effort aimed at detecting the existence of extraterrestrials, extrasolar intelligent life. Then they put out another book NASA did in 2014. This collection of essays explores the innovative contributions that archaeology, anthropology are making to contemporary SETI research. They're trying to communicate with extraterrestrials, NASA is, but of course they don't exist. So now we have another hearing, September 9th of 2025, House Oversight Committee Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets. And one of the things that I thought that was the most interesting was they talked about how they were harassing Grush. Remember the first hearing in 2023? Yeah, they were saying, okay, we got to put a stop to this because they were trying to take away his health care and his pension and everything else. In this video, though, I thought it was really interesting. I think it was Eric Burleson from a legislature from Missouri. He said this tape was given to him. This is a tape. This is still pictures, but this was given to him. This is U.S. military Hellfighter missile fired from a Reaper drone, bounces off a bright, shiny object being tracked off the coast of Yemen, October 30th of 2024. So I don't know if any of you saw the video, but you can see that the top picture on the left is this missile being fired at an object that's kind of in the center. It bounces off it down at the bottom left picture. You can see the missile there. The object is still intact. So basically there's a video of us shooting at one of these unknown objects from a Reaper drone, and this video is from a drone, and it's just bouncing off it. The whatever the unidentified object spins a little bit and then just keeps on going. So why are alien races colonizing Earth's waterways? Well, undetectable travel. They probably have bases underwater. Gosh knows for how long. Cities maybe. Studying marine life. That's also secure location, obviously, to take abductees. Hydrogen. H2O, they might be harvesting our hydrogen, which I asked Lou Elizondo in 2018 when I met him for the first time, and I said, okay, what are they going for underwater? And he goes, I think they're part of it is they're harvesting our hydrogen, but you can't tell anybody. And I said, I had a presentation for MUFON in 2017, and I already said that. So I said, too late, Lou. But our NASA used hydrogen to replenish its fuel cells back, Mercury, Apollo. They could be harvesting food sources. So if you want to know a little bit more about a lot of the underwater things, I have a book that came out in 2021, Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, and it's available on Amazon. And right now, I just finished it. It hasn't even gone to the publisher editor yet. Deepwater Aliens, Residents and Abductors. And that book, all the people that I talked about in the sightings in this presentation, it's going to go way deeper. There'll be a chapter on each one of them, a lot more detail of the lives they led and how they either came to be abducted, how they remember, what happened and what kind of a family person they were. It's just not just this person just got taken. You learn a little bit about who they are, what kind of person and what kind of family member and how long it's been going on. So that's it. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions. Let's give her a big round of applause before we do the questions, though.
Do you
I'm
want
going to
me
ask
to
Tori and Peter to watch the chat for questions in the chat. And what's that, Debbie?
do you want me to quit sharing my screen?
Sure. I know I got a question here in the back. Raise your hand in the room if you got a question. And in case you want to look up the books, just remember Ziegelmeier is spelled exactly like it sounds. That should be very easy for you. So
Let's stop share. Okay. There we go. Now oh, it's gotten dark. Should probably turn on a light.
okay. Yeah. Can we get a light over here?
Yeah. I'm in the dark here a little spooky. I
Oh,
got
yep,
it
yep. There we go.
off my shoulder.
Yes, greetings. My name is Rico, and I'm basically looking for some people that can help me. I've been a contactee and an experiencer since I was a child. I've had encounters with reptilians, Arcturians, shapeshifters, cryptids, paranormal. I got pictures, I got videos, grays. I have something in my hand. I have something else somewhere else on my body that I'm aware of. They continue to make themselves known around me. I know that some of them are forces that wanted to keep me quiet. They sabotaged my movie production when I was trying to give out information or make the film about what I was shown, things that were revealed that are happening today. I've got so much and I don't have anyone to talk to. I've been looking for years trying to put out some of my information. I've had crafts hover above me. I've had some sort of craft that I was sharing with a couple of gentlemen here that it was magenta in color. It seemed to be organic. I think I was abducted on the beach in San Diego. This huge UAP, you guys are, whatever you're calling them, this huge craft came above me, spun around. It seemed like it appeared through a portal. I knew it appeared through a portal. And I was on the beach and it was at night. And I don't recall what happened. I know I lost some time there. I had an ex-girlfriend who woke up screaming next to me because it was a tall gray standing above me. And she managed to, I guess, spook it away. I had they keep coming to me and in this camouflage, doing something to me. When I pull myself out of it, what you guys are calling sleep paralysis, it's not sleep paralysis, it's something else. Because I can pull myself out of it and I see them and they scurry up the wall and they sort of dissipate into. I'm trying to find answers. I'm trying to find out what's going on. I know when I was a child, this one being, she was female, she revealed some stuff to me about what we're supposed to be doing with our pineal glands. And she told me I'm supposed to help train people or something. And I know ever since then, they've just made my life, the forces that have been against me have just made my life difficult. They've made me a TI. I had a lot of people wanting me to teach them, and I've experienced using echo vibration or sonar or whatever. I've experienced using not only telepathy, but telekinesis, but they keep me from being able to practice or get the information out. She showed me a zombie apocalypse that's coming. This was all in like the 90s. So there's stuff happening that I was putting in my movie, and all of this stuff is happening right now, and it's tough to live with and to deal with, and have no one to help.
Are you there in person or are you online?
I'm here in person.
Okay, then you need to talk to somebody after the meeting because MUFON does have people that help you. They're the ERT team, and so I mean, I'll let the people there in person talk to you and explain how they can assist you or how they can lead you in the right direction to where you can at least speak to somebody who's got experience in that type of thing. Correctly? I mean, is there
That's
somebody?
correct. ERT,
Yes,
Experiencer Resource Team.
yes.
And Bill's actually on the team too, so I can get you in touch with Bill and stuff. So
Okay, thank you.
any other questions here in the room? A question over? All right. Are there questions online? Are we seeing questions online? Good.
Ready for me?
Yeah, we're all ready for you.
Because I thought somebody else was talking. I did with Mike Harris. I think I asked you this last year, but on a side note first, Betty Andreessen did come here. I think it was 96 or 97, and really had a good talk and visit with him. Very interesting. But I'm interested in mermaids. I'm also interested in UFOs, of course, and aliens, and more so than that. But my question is, have you have anybody know that you've talked to that you believe is credible that has actually seen a mermaid or merman type creature? The one that you showed there that you thought was real, I've seen the video of that too, and that looks real because there are people in there, and I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet that is faked, obviously, like mermaids being trapped in nets. But have you personally had anybody tell you that they have had an experience with a mermaid or a merman? You thought they were credible, and they were actually like a literal, underwater creature that has like a human face, not like
Not
you or
not
me, but humanoid with
yeah,
and
not
fins.
personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not personally, I haven't, but you're right. I'd seen the video too, and I couldn't get it verified by anybody, but I put that still picture because if you notice after that, all the different descriptions really fit that. That now the divers, they said that the one had a helmet, but the gentleman in 19, let's see, would have been, let's see, the print was I think in 79, would have been 1977 off of Miami. And it was a very famous diver at the time. I'm thinking Jacques Cousteau, but I can't, I don't know. But they said a very famous diver at the time. They didn't want to give his name. They saw off of Miami. They didn't say anything about it having any kind of a helmet or dive gear. I haven't seen anything that had a, like one tail, like a fish. But if you remember too, some of what I was talking about when they said when they're swimming away, they have fins for feet. So we don't know if maybe somewhere along the way when someone said they thought they saw a mermaid, if they didn't have their legs together pushing. I mean, I've done that swimming for exercise where, I just put my feet together and I'm doing this, and then, just like kicking back, especially underwater if I'm trying to, I don't want my legs flailing around, especially with my fins. I got big split fins. And if you're in a reef, you want to make sure too that you're not kicking the reef. So I'll get my legs very, very close together and try and maneuver around. And I'll do this as much as I can because a lot of the dives, especially Cozumel, are drift dives. So that could explain maybe mermaids that, how the legs, it's like a fish fin. It could be some of these very tall 10-foot creatures that just have their legs close together while they're swimming. It's more aerodynamic. But as far as personally, no, but I've read a lot of reports, especially in and around Russia. I was surprised at the Stringfield files. I need to look more into those too and see if there's any more reports because that one was off of Miami. But as far as a real mermaid, even they talk about gnomes, then you start to begin to wonder about the little people. There's all the stories about all the little people that, they go way back. What were they really seeing? And now that you go through biblical and there's creatures, there's people that are being taken up into, well, Native American. They used to call it the giant thunderbird. Now they're saying, wow, we're thinking that might be a giant craft. So I do believe that we refer to them. You have to call them something, and somehow along the way they were called mermaids. But yeah, I think absolutely these creatures with very credible people, have seen large 10-foot tall creatures underwater.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. All right. Any questions online? Do we get any questions online? No? Any questions here in the room? Any last questions in the room? Okay. Well, thank you, Debbie, very much. Now I got to ask the scary question. It's a scary question for me, Debbie. Are we going to see you back here next December?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, we got next December. We had Debbie for supper next December. Give her a big round of applause. So, okay, before we run off, I want to remind everybody this next coming Saturday, September 20th, Northland MUFON, Grand Rapids VFW, and the Fargo Carlson Library. They have Lenval Logan. He's got 20 years Air Force experience, 15 years government contractor. So you can check it out online. If you're up in the area, you can go see him in person. Don't forget Northland MUFON. And thank you all for a fantastic 2025. We'll see you right back here again in January for 2026. Until then, take care, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Keep your eyes on the skies and have a fantastic new year and be safe out there. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.